Okay, so this is my first official post on here, but I have to share this story. It happened about 3 years ago. I lived in the United States. I was about 6'1", 210 pounds, and I was a 23-year-old white male college student that was living in a predominantly Hispanic, low-income neighborhood when this occurred. About 5 minutes after my Pizza Hut shift, one night I decided to walk across the street to buy a couple of tall boys at my local liquor store. Excited about it being the weekend and getting to sleep in the next morning. I know, I had no life. So as the cashier was handing me my bag of booze across the counter, a muffled, yet short female scream reverberated through the store from just outside. I distinctly remember how pitiful it sounded. The cashier and I made certain eye contact where you're both like, what the fuck? After a brief silence, he just shrugs his shoulders slowly and tells me to be careful getting home. I nod my head and start out after giving him a gracias from over my shoulders. I know it seems like we may have underreacted, but honestly, you see and hear a lot of crazy shit in this city, especially at night. So in addition to not wanting to get mixed up in something, you don't just call the cops over anything, especially a random scream. Even with that being said, thinking about how pitiful it sounded gave me a mixture of disgust, anger, and cold fear. My heart speeding up at this point, I opened the liquor store door slightly and looked around outside. After hearing and seeing nothing but traffic for about 15 seconds, I decided to start walking home, head down, eyes and ears open. But as soon as I rounded the liquor store corner, I was greeted by an obviously intoxicated, but somehow steady, short, stocky Hispanic man with a scratched up face and a really stretched out shirt. Assuming he was one of the few drunks that live in a small but dense patch of the forest about 12 feet behind the store, I completely disregarded him and continued walking. At first. Something about his behaviour caught my attention. He looked extremely nervous, and as if he were up to something. I could hear a faint, almost non-existent gurgle-like sound coming from in the trees. Immediately, I began to suspect he had something to do with the scream I just heard minutes before. Upon making eye contact, he caught me on the fast that I suspected him. "Está bien?" Spanish for, "How are you?" He awkwardly asked me, smiling way too much and motioning for me to follow him into the darkness behind the store. I pretty much told him to fuck off and continued walking home at a much faster pace now, looking behind me every 16 steps or so. I began wondering what the hell that noise was coming from in the woods and why that man was acting so shady. Maybe I was just overreacting though. Maybe the sound was just an old pipe or drain nearby. Maybe he really was just drunk and didn't want me to call the cops on him for public intoxication, or something like that. I now wish with everything within me I would have called the police then and there and went back to the store and waited. About 5 minutes later, while walking down a particularly dark and isolated stretch of road about half a mile before my apartments, out of fucking nowhere the man I'd just seen burst through some shrubbery about 12 feet from on my back left, wielding a fucking machete. That's right. A fucking machete. Honestly, you can't make this shit up. I immediately went into panic mode and threw my beers at him and began running as fast as my legs would carry me towards my apartment building, hoping I had enough strength left within me to make it. I now realized I should have run back towards the store as it was closer, but as I stated, he came from behind me, and the rest is instinct. He was initially so close behind me I swear I could hear the blade cutting through the air as he swung at me from behind. I honestly expected a machete blow to the neck or head at any second. That's a very unique, very hard state of mind to be in, knowing that you could die at any moment. The worst, most gruesome thoughts of me being murdered began to fill my mind. Would I trip, only to have a defensive arm hacked off right before my eyes? Or would I be halfway decapitated mid-stride, falling hard and bleeding out as the other parts of my body were cut away? Tears began to fill my eyes as the thought of how my family would feel knowing I was hacked to death, bleeding out on the side of a dark road alone. I began to scream. Half out of desperation to live, the other half out of the fear of not wanting to die such a horrible death. I know it sounds bitchy, but you can't really judge until you're being chased down by someone who literally wants to hack you apart your body until you die. I'll try to shorten the story a little now. Yes, I eventually made it home. Some part of me knew I'd lost the guy way before getting there, but my fear and adrenaline refused to let me stop running. I collapsed as soon as I made it inside, and tried to focus on not going into cardiac arrest from not only running so hard, but with the fear of my life. I tried to remember everything I'd learned in the army about 2-mile recovery drill. It helped a little. Anyone who's been in even a remotely similar situation can understand why I never called the police. After a much needed water and heavy breathing, it was 30 minutes before I could even put a chain of complete, rational thoughts together due to the shock and mental/physical exhaustion caused by whatever just happened, by which time the guy would be long gone. I remember all I could think about was how the hell I didn't hear him getting close to me after a whole 5 minutes of walking, especially with him being under the influence and me being sober. Needless to say, after double checking all the doors and windows, I fell into a paranoid sleep, gripping a kitchen knife soon after. The next day I came to find that a young teenage girl had been raped and killed behind the same store around the time I'd been leaving the previous night. Her throat had been slit and her body dumped not far from where she'd been raped. Every person that lived behind the store was tested against the semen found inside the girl's body, and not one was a match. As far as I know, the guy has never been caught. I'm 120% sure that the scratched face and the stretched shirt on the man I'd seen the previous night were remnants of the poor girl's futile attempt to fight off her rapist and killer. And that suspicion he saw on my face was enough for him to want to kill me, as he must have thought I was a witness or something. The mother of the child had only sent her there to buy some orange juice for something she'd been making for dinner that night. The liquor store was the closest carrier of orange juice in the area. I can't help but feel kinda guilty though, and I feel so horrible for the girl's family, especially the mother. If I'd called the police then and there and went back inside, would he have been caught? I remind myself that things played out the way they did, and I can't change the past. The worst part, though, is thinking that that gurgling sound I'd heard was the girl trying to breathe despite choking on her own blood mere yards from me. I'm almost certain that this is true. Also, who the hell just carries around a damn machete? Is that what he used to cut the girl's throat? Nevertheless, Michael Myers, machete-wielding rapist, let's never meet ever again.